Hey friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Sarah. Thanks so much for stopping by. So tonight I want to talk to you guys about the books that I have read in the last week or so. I have read 3 books and DNF'd 1. That puts my book count at 6 read and 2 DNFs so far. I'm about halfway through the month. I think it's the 17th of November tonight. And so for me, that's really great progress as far as, knocking books off my TBR for the month, because I just have a super busy life and I don't get as much reading time as I would like, but this month has been slower and I have been a lot more intentional about just reading instead of, scrolling or other pointless activities. So let's get into the stuff that I have read in the last week or so. So I did finish Spare by Prince Harry, and I did enjoy this biography. In fact, I think it's probably the best autobiography that I've read. And I understand he has a ghostwriter, so there's that. But so I've always been sort of partial to William, growing up reading all of the tabloid stories about Harry and all of the trouble he got into, and how just giving the royal family such a bad name and all these things. I think that it did affect my feelings about him, my thoughts about him. And so reading his autobiography really helps to open my eyes to his side of the story. Now, I am not so naive to believe that everything in here is the way it really is, right? It's his perspective. It would be great to have some kind of a response from, William and Charles. I don't care so much about Charles, William especially, but that probably is not going to happen, and that's totally fine, right? Because really, when it comes down to it, it's just a lot of gossip. So, whatever. But I did enjoy reading this autobiography. It did make me feel compassionate towards Harry, and I think I'm probably really pro Harry and Meghan now. So maybe I need to read something from another perspective, or maybe not. Like I said, I know that not everything in here is 100% accurate, but there is enough obvious just post-traumatic stuff, grief that has never been dealt with, and seeing that playing out in his life throughout the decades. I think that it just makes me really angry with Charles and the Queen, Camilla, whoever had some kind of authority in Harry's life and refused to get him the help he needed. It seems from his perspective that it was because, we didn't want to cause a scene, we didn't want to have a scandal, we didn't want to have that on our name, and you just need to keep calm and carry on, or, pull yourself by your bootstraps, or whatever other weird phrase goes along with this. But basically, just don't show emotion or weakness. And I saw that as a common thread with Charles, and I'm assuming that was also a common thread with the Queen. And that just makes me really angry because above all else, they were a family and should have taken care of him and got him the help, the counseling that he needed, given him someone that he could talk to, that he could grieve with, that he could work through these things with. And there is just no way that nobody ever noticed that this was needed. So that made me pretty angry. No matter how we feel about Harry and Meghan, I think that we can agree that Harry is probably living a little better than he has. He's not in the papers as much with so much chaotic, crazy going on, and it seems like he is quite a bit more stable and happy, and so we can be happy about that, right? Reading this was just kind of nostalgic because I'm the same age as William and my brother is the same age as Harry, and so reading their growing up years and the different stuff they got up to reminds me a lot of the stuff we got up to, and just the fact that we all sort of grew up together with just an ocean and a class system in between, right? There was a lot of instances where Harry just felt really misunderstood and unknown by the people around him who should have taken the time to understand him and know him. I could really relate to a lot of his perspective on things, and just, the whole idea that his parents, his family were too wrapped up in their own dramatic stuff to be the kind of people they needed to be for him. That's really unfortunate. What a great example they could have been had they put aside their own stuff and, been a father, a grandfather, whatever, a brother, whatever he needed, in the public eye to show an example of a family watching out for each other. I think that for what it's worth, lately with the stuff going on with Catherine and Charles and their cancer issues and the stuff that we've seen going on with them, and we've seen William protect her and keep his family protected and a bit sheltered, and I think that that's super wise for them to do that. So maybe there is hope there after all. Alright, next up is this one called The Cemetery of Untold Stories by Julia Alvarez. This was a surprising, sort of spontaneous pick for me. It's one of those that I just grabbed when I was browsing Barnes & Noble and thought, that sounds interesting. I did describe this in my last book haul video, I think, my birthday book haul video, and it wasn't what I thought it would be, and I liked it. I actually liked it more after I realized, what it is. So basically, the main character in this story is one of 4 sisters, I think, and she is a writer. She's been a famous, well-known author for decades, I guess, and she gets to the point where she's ready to retire, and it comes along the same time that the estate of their father has been sort of finalized, and the sisters all get a portion of the money. And so she takes her money and buys some land in the Dominican Republic, where I guess they are originally from, or that's where their ancestry is anyway. And so she buys some land there and moves there. She buys this land that is by the dump, and she starts to sort of, create a cemetery. And the cemetery is for her to lay to rest the stories that she never finished. So she burns a bunch of them, but there are 2 particular boxes, I guess, that will not burn, and so she buries them. And she has some markers, grave marker type things commissioned for these 2 spots to represent the stories of the people who are buried there. So eventually these people who were these stories were about, they sort of start telling their stories. They start to speak to people who walk by. You have to be kind of like a special person to be able to hear the story. But there's a particular woman who works there at that property, and she stops to take the time and listens and hears the stories of these 2 people. So the book is basically about telling the stories of people who didn't get the opportunity to tell their own story. So these 2 people who are, sort of speaking from beyond the grave, or beyond their stories, basically, in the Cemetery of Untold Stories. One of them is the fictional character of the author's father, and then the other is the second wife of El Jefe, the former dictator of the Dominican Republic, Rafael Trujillo. Her name is Bienvenida Ricardo Martinez, and she was the middle wife that sort of lost to history because his third wife kind of wrote her off the books, just deleted her name off of, prominent buildings that they had named after her, schools or streets or whatever, and Bienvenida just disappeared. So that storyline tells the actual story of this real life woman. And I thought that was really cool. So, of course, I'd never heard about her because, again, she's been kind of erased from history. And so that was neat to read about her and read about, El Jefe and just that whole part of history that I really didn't know anything about. One of the themes in the story was the idea that the author, the woman author, did not know this whole other side of her father. And I think that's one of the reasons why she may have abandoned writing his story, is that she had a difficult time thinking his thoughts. There was this whole other life that this father had that she knew nothing about. And much of it, there was some actual life that she didn't know that he was living, but a lot of it actually was just thinking about the fact that he had thoughts that she never knew, feelings and dreams and hopes and visions and past that she never knew anything about because it was all in his mind. And it just made me think about all the people that we know and that we spend time with, and our family members, whatever, and we never really know everything, right? We don't know everything that's going on in their head. We don't know everything that they are thinking about or hoping for or dreaming about or wondering about. They're curious about all the things they want to ask us and they don't. we don't know all that stuff. And so it's just so curious to me to really think that through. And so I kind of took some time to think about my father, who had passed away. It'll be 3 years in January that he has been gone. And he had all kinds of thoughts and all kinds of dreams and plans and goals and stuff in his head that I just never knew about. And it's not a revelation to me that he had these. It's just that I've never thought about the fact that he did until now. So that was just an interesting, philosophical thing. So this one quote here towards the end was very thought-provoking. So Alma is the authoress and her father is Manuel Cruz. And it says this: Alma realized how little she knew her father, only the small nation of Papi in the large continent of Manuel Cruz. The guarded, daughter-proofed stories he dished out over the years turned out to be impediments to the deep country of whoever else it was he was. There's just a lot of sort of beautiful, thought-provoking things in this book. I really enjoyed it. I think that someone probably needs a general, basic knowledge of kind of like basic Spanish for some of this to really get into it. I mean, it's not like heavily in Spanish. You can still read it, but there's a lot of times where she sort of goes back and forth between Spanish and English, and so knowing Spanish, getting a general idea of what she's saying lends to your enjoyment, I'm positive. But it's doable either way. And as far as content, there was some profanity kind of throughout. Not super excessive, but it was definitely there. But otherwise, yeah, I really enjoyed this. And I enjoyed the cover art too. Like, so pretty. So I didn't realize that Julia Alvarez is like a well-known author. I hadn't read anything by her before, so I'll be looking for more from her. All right, and then the third book I just finished right before I started this video, and that was The Body in the Library by Agatha Christie. So I've been reading through the Agatha Christie's with Miss Marple that are ones that I've seen in the Joan Hickson TV shows from the 80s, if that makes sense. So I have, up until the beginning of the summer, I hadn't read any Agatha Christie's. I had only watched all of the Poirots with David Suchet, and then I had watched all of the Miss Marples with Joan Hickson that they made in the 80s and early 90s. Those are my favorite ones. There is no other Miss Marple except for Joan Hickson that I just stand on. But anyway, so now I'm picking up the different novels that Agatha Christie wrote that they made into those TV shows, if that makes sense. I haven't gone into the Poirots yet at all, just the Miss Marples. And I think this might be number like 6 or 7 that I've read of hers so far. I am enjoying them. I did start another copy of The Body in the Library, but it's one of the newer ones that they have recently been putting out that is heavily edited, that takes out all the things that, makes Agatha Christie just not palatable to the 21st century, and I don't like that. Regardless about how I feel about what she has written, that's what she has written. So to change her stories posthumously like that, I very much don't think that that is okay. I think we can learn from, the personalities that weren't great as well as the personalities that were great, right? And I feel like if we are erasing all of the yuck from our history, it's hard to be able to remember the bad consequences of the yuck from our history if it's not there to look back on, right? So anyway, all that to say, I've been looking for the older versions of this of her books, and I think this one's like 87 or something, 1987. So Body in the Library, if you don't know this story, there's a body in the library of a very wealthy man. And so, of course, there's a lot of suspicion cast on him. He just wakes up one morning and is told there's a body in his library, a dead body. And so people are suspecting him, but also don't really want to, right? Because he's so upper class that he couldn't possibly have done something so horrible. And so, of course, there's all kinds of people brought into the story that suspicion is cast on, and contrary to the way that they do it in the TV show, Miss Marple doesn't usually show up until pretty late in the story, and that's the same thing here. And so the story is all resolved and all fine. It doesn't go nearly in depth as they made the TV show to be, and so there is kind of that element of, I guess I did probably like the show better, but I do like how this ended, sort of in a happy wrap up, and it did make me like some of the characters better in the way they were portrayed in her original story than the way they were portrayed on TV. So there's that. But I think I'm gonna try and maybe get into those Poirots pretty soon. I do think that I want to rewatch the TV episodes before I start reading the Poirots, and I don't usually do that at all. I don't usually watch, you know, the movie before the book or anything like that. But I think because Agatha Christie, she brings in so many characters so quickly. It's usually Mrs. and Mr. this and that, and so that is hard kind of to keep track of as well. And then it's just the stories are similar, right, from one to another. I think it helps me to sort of have the visual in my head as I'm going through her books. And so I feel like I'm reading Agatha Christie kind of as a comparative study between, you know, what she did in her stories as compared to how, you know, producers or whatever are portraying them on the screen. And I think that's a fun comparative study and totally fine. All right, and then finally, this is the book that I was given by the publisher. I did not actually, you know, go looking for this, but this publisher, Canon Press, sent me this book, My Dear Hemlock. It is a riff on the Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. This one is by Tilly de la Haye, and it is written to mainstream Christian women. Now, I'm not a mainstream Christian woman, but I am a Bible believing woman. I just got out of the church and I just sort of do my own thing, right, between me and God and his word. So I came at this book with that perspective, and I didn't like it. Before I go into the details, those of you who are doing Epistolary January, this would be a great book for that, especially if you are a believer, because it is written all in letters, just like the Screwtape Letters were. And so you may want to look for this new publication and add it to your Epistolary January if you find that what I have to say interests you. It's basically a cleverly written and somewhat disguised kind of a manual on how to be a Christian woman as mainstream Christianity defines it. Most of it is not necessarily bad advice, but it can be taken as sarcastically preachy, extremely preachy actually, and that's pretty much what turned me off from reading it in depth. I did go through and read enough of it to be able to provide a review that, you know, is fair and honest. But I think that the author really wades into some dangerous territory in several different places when she kind of gets into subjects that clearly aren't as cut and dried biblically as the church likes to say that they are. She makes a lot of blanket statements and blanket, just, you know, preachings, teachings, I guess, that overlook several demographics of women and several life experience issues that maybe she doesn't have any experience with, and so she's just sort of naive. I don't really know, but I did not enjoy the story. I'm going to put a link to my Goodreads in the description box so that you can go on and read all of the details that I wrote about this book without me having to clog up this video with them all. But can't necessarily recommend because I don't agree with the doctrine of this story. But if you did enjoy the Screwtape Letters and you are looking for something in that vein, then this could be a possibility for you to look into. Alright guys, that's it. That is a wrap. I am on November 17th and I've got 6 books down, so feeling good about that. Alright guys, have a great night. I will see you soon. Bye-bye.